$7.95 billion. That's how much money changed hands last year on just one business for sale marketplace. Not venture capital, not the stock market, not crypto, just ordinary people buying ordinary businesses from other ordinary people. According to the 2025 Biz Buy Sell Insight report, 9,486 small businesses were sold last year at a median price of $350,000. And here's the part that should make you sit up. The median cash flow of those sold businesses was $950 a year. That means the average buyer paid roughly 2.6 times the annual profit, then sat back and collected that profit every single year after. Meanwhile, 8 out of 10 people who tried to start a business from scratch failed within 18 months. The math isn't even close. And yet, almost every business video you've ever watched tells you to start something. Build it from nothing, grind it out, hustle harder. But the wealthiest people I've studied don't think that way at all. They skip the startup phase entirely. They look for a business that already has customers, already has cash flow, already has a reputation, and they write a check. Then they optimize, then they scale, then they do it again. Today, I'm going to show you 10 businesses that wealthy, quiet operators buy instead of build. These aren't flashy, they're not trendy, but every single one of them prints real money from day one. And the last one on this list, number 1, is the one that shocked me the most because of how stable the cash flow is and how few people even think about buying one. My name is John. Let's get into it. Number 10, automated car washes. Let me paint a picture for you. A guy on our Sweaty Startup shared how he picked up a closed 2-bay self-serve car wash for $40,000. He originally bought the lot because he wanted the billboard advertising rights on the property. Then he realized the car wash itself could be reopened. Within 6 months, that $40,000 purchase was generating enough monthly revenue to cover its entire cost within the first year. Here's why rich people love buying car washes instead of building them. Building a new express tunnel car wash from the ground up costs anywhere from $3 million to $5 million. You need land, you need permits, you need equipment, you need 12 to 18 months of construction before a single car rolls through. But buying an existing one, you walk in, the equipment's already there, the location's already proven, and customers already know where it is. The U.S. car wash industry is valued at over $15 billion, and the best part is the membership model. Modern car washes sell unlimited monthly wash subscriptions for $20 to $40 a month. That's recurring revenue. A well-run express tunnel doing 300 cars a day at an average of $15 per wash is generating over $1.6 million a year in gross revenue. Profit margins on automated washes run between 35% and 50% because once the tunnel is built, your incremental cost per car is just soap, water, and electricity. Here's what the experienced operators on Reddit keep saying. You buy a car wash as much for the dirt under it as the wash tunnel on top of it. It's a real estate play wrapped in a subscription business, and that combination is exactly what makes it attractive to people with capital. Number 9, insurance agencies. This one flies completely under the radar, and that's exactly why smart money loves it. When you buy an insurance agency, you're not really buying a building or equipment. You're buying what the industry calls a book of business. That's a fancy way of saying you're buying a list of customers who are already paying premiums every single month, and those premiums generate commissions that renew automatically every year. According to industry acquisition data, a standard insurance book of business sells for 1.5 to 3 times its annual commission revenue. So if an agency earns $200,000 a year in commissions, you're paying somewhere between $300,000 and $600,000 to acquire it. But here's the magic. Those policies renew. The average retention rate on a well-managed property and casualty book is over 90%. That means 9 out of every 10 clients you bought will still be paying you next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. The standard deal structure is beautiful too. Most sellers agree to earn-out terms where you put 50% down at closing and pay the remaining 50% over 2 to 3 years, contingent on policy renewals actually hitting their targets. So the seller is literally guaranteeing their own product. The key risk is what they call key man risk. If the original agent had deep personal relationships with every client, some of those clients might leave when the face changes. That's why smart buyers negotiate a 6 to 12 month transition period where the selling agent introduces them to every major account. Here's what nobody tells you. Private equity firms are now paying 10 to 12 times EBITDA for large regional agencies with over $5 million in revenue. That means you can buy a small book for 2 times revenue, grow it to that threshold, and sell it at a completely different multiple. The arbitrage is enormous. And here's a critical detail most people miss. Before you close on any insurance book, you need to confirm that the underlying insurance carriers will actually appoint you. If a carrier rejects your appointment, you cannot service those policies or collect renewal commissions. That one phone call to the carrier can save you from buying a book you literally cannot monetize. Experienced agents on Reddit call this the single most overlooked step in insurance agency acquisitions. Number 8, HVAC companies. Let's do the simple math. A small HVAC company doing $1.5 million in annual revenue with one owner and 3 technicians typically sells for 2.5 to 3.5 times the seller's discretionary earnings. If that owner is taking home $300,000 a year after adding back all their personal expenses, you're looking at a purchase price between $750,000 and just over $1 million. You finance 90% of that through an SBA 7A loan, put 10% down, and from day one, you're collecting the cash flow that company has been producing for years. Here's why HVAC specifically attracts buyers with capital. Every HVAC company has something called a maintenance membership base. Homeowners who pay $150 to $300 a year for seasonal tune-ups and priority service. Those memberships are pure recurring revenue, and they're valued at 2 to 3 times their annual amount on top of the normal business purchase price. A company with 500 maintenance members paying $200 a year has a $100,000 in recurring revenue that renews automatically. Buyers see that as a $200,000 to $300,000 asset sitting right on top of the regular business value. The playbook after acquisition is straightforward. You install modern dispatch software like Service Titan or House Call Pro. You launch Google Local Services ads. You push the maintenance membership harder. And you remove the owner dependency that kept the business small. One user on our sweaty startup put it perfectly. You don't need to hold the wrench to buy an HVAC company, but you must have a licensed master technician who stays on board. The wrench holder makes the money. The business buyer keeps it. And here's the bigger picture. Private equity firms are aggressively buying HVAC companies right now at 6 to 8 times EBITDA. They're paying premium multiples for companies with over $1 million in EBITDA, which means if you buy a small shop at 3 times earnings, grow it, and then sell it into one of those roll-ups, you're exiting at double or triple what you paid. That's the acquisition game in a nutshell. Number 7, dental practices. This one might surprise you because you probably think of dentists as people who spent 8 years in school to earn the right to drill teeth. And that's true. But here's what most people don't realize. You don't have to be a dentist to own a dental practice. The model that's exploded in the last decade is called a dental service organization, or DSO, where a business operator acquires the practice, handles the business side, and employs licensed dentists to do the clinical work. The numbers are remarkable. A solo dental practice typically sells for 60% to 85% of its annual gross collections, or about 2.5 to 4 times sellers' discretionary earnings. So a practice collecting $1 million a year in patient revenue might sell for $600,000 to $850,000. And here's what makes dental practices almost unfairly attractive to buyers. Specialty dental lenders like Live Oak Bank routinely finance 100% of the purchase price, plus working capital for qualified buyers. The default rate on dental practice loans is under 1%. Banks love funding these because the cash flow is so predictable. The revenue mix matters, though. Practices that balance medical dentistry, which is the bread and butter insurance-covered stuff, with cosmetic and surgical services, which are cash pay and high margin, command the highest multiples. A practice doing $2 million with 40% of revenue from cosmetic procedures is worth significantly more than one doing $2 million entirely from insurance cleanings. Here's the arbitrage that PE firms figured out. They buy individual practices at 3 to 4 times earnings, bundle 10 or 20 of them into a DSO platform, centralize the billing, purchasing, and marketing, and then sell the entire platform at 8 to 11 times earnings. The math is almost embarrassingly simple. Buy low, consolidate, sell high. The due diligence on dental is different from most businesses, though. You're not just checking profit and loss statements. You need a quality of earnings audit that evaluates the payer mix, how much comes from fee-for-service versus PPO versus Medicaid. You need to verify the active patient count, meaning patients seen within the last 18 to 24 months, not patients who came in once 4 years ago and never returned. And you need to look at the hygienist production ratio versus the doctor production ratio, because a practice where the dentist does everything is a practice that falls apart the moment that dentist takes a vacation. Number 6, gas stations and convenience stores. Now let me tell you something that'll change how you look at every gas station you drive past. The fuel is not the business. The fuel is the bait. According to the National Association of Convenience Stores, gross margins on gasoline are razor thin, somewhere between 0.15 and 0.25 per gallon. On a busy day pumping 5,000 gallons, that's maybe $1,000 in gross profit on fuel. But the inside of that store, the snacks, the drinks, the tobacco, the hot food, those items carry 30% to 40% gross margins. A gas station that does $1.5 million in inside sales is generating $450,000 to $600,000 in gross profit just from the convenience store. That's why experienced buyers evaluate gas stations as two separate assets. The business operations, which typically sell for 3.5 to 5 times EBITDA, and the real estate, which is valued separately using commercial cap rates of 6% to 8%. A gas station doing $200,000 in annual EBITDA, sitting on real estate worth $500,000, might have a total acquisition price of $1.2 million to $1.5 million. You finance it, the cash flow covers the debt, and you own a tangible asset that appreciates. But there's a critical warning that every single experienced buyer on Reddit echoes. Underground storage tanks. You must demand Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessments before closing. Contaminated soil from leaking fuel tanks can cost $200,000 to $1 million to remediate. That's the kind of liability that can bankrupt a new owner before they pump their first gallon. Here's the part nobody mentions, though. A gas station is essentially a captive audience machine. People pull in for gas and then spend money on coffee, snacks, lottery tickets, and car washes. If you add a quick service food counter or a branded coffee program, you can double the inside revenue without adding a single new customer. You're just monetizing the traffic that's already there. Number 5, parking lots and garages. This is the quietest real estate play in America. And I say real estate play deliberately, because when you buy a parking lot, you're not really buying a business. You're buying land that happens to have one of the simplest possible revenue models sitting on top of it. Cars park. People pay. There are no employees, no inventory, no seasonal swings, and almost no maintenance. Cash-on-cash returns for standalone parking operations typically target 8% to 11% cap rates. In a world where savings accounts pay 4% and the stock market averages 10% with massive volatility, a parking lot generating a steady 9% with almost zero operational complexity looks very attractive. The most passive version of this is the net lease model. You buy the lot and then lease it to a national parking operator like SP Plus or LAZ Parking. They handle everything: enforcement, technology, staffing, and they pay you a fixed monthly rent or a revenue share split. Some owners report 80-20 splits in their favor. The tech upgrade play is where the real margin improvement happens. Converting a manual attendant lot to automated license plate recognition gates and pay-by-app kiosks costs $20,000 to $50,000 up front, but increases net yield by over 30% by eliminating cash theft and uncollected fees. That's a one-time investment that permanently raises the income floor. But here's the real reason wealthy investors buy parking lots. It's a land banking strategy. You collect cash flow today while holding land that appreciates over decades. In urban centers, the dirt underneath a parking lot is often worth more than the parking operation itself. One parking lot in a growing downtown corridor could eventually be worth 5 to 10 times what you paid once the area densifies enough for redevelopment. You're getting paid to wait. Number 4, RV parks and campgrounds. Here's a sector that most business buyers never even consider, and that's exactly why the opportunity exists. Post-pandemic, RV ownership surged. The Recreation Vehicle Industry Association reported that RV shipments topped 493,000 units in a single year during the peak. All those RVs need somewhere to park, plug in, and dump their tanks. There are not nearly enough parks to serve the demand. The typical mom-and-pop RV park with 30 to 50 pads in a secondary market trades at cap rates of 7% to 10%, sometimes 12% or higher for rural properties that need work. Operating expenses run 40% to 50% of gross revenue, covering utilities, a park manager, trash, septic pumping, and groundskeeping. The rest is your net operating income. The value-add playbook that smart buyers use is almost formulaic. You buy a tired park with outdated hookups and no amenities. You convert long-term monthly tenants paying $400 to high-margin nightly vacation spots at $50 to $75 per night. You install sub-meters for electricity so tenants pay their own power instead of you absorbing it. You add high-speed Wi-Fi and a laundry facility. These improvements can double the net operating income within 18 to 24 months without adding a single new pad. Seller financing is extremely common in this space. Most deals close with 20% to 30% down and the seller carrying a note on the rest. That's because institutional lenders consider RV parks a niche property type and typically cap loan to value at 65% to 70%. But that seller carry actually works in your favor because it means the seller has skin in the game during the transition period. There's a phrase that keeps showing up in investor forums. An RV park is a hospitality business first and real estate second. If you treat it like a passive investment, you'll struggle. But if you treat it like a customer experience business that happens to sit on dirt, the returns can be spectacular. One more thing about RV parks. The cap rates advertised at 15% to 20% almost always indicate severe unrecorded maintenance liabilities. Maybe the septic system hasn't been inspected in a decade. Maybe the electrical hookups aren't up to code. That dream deal at a 15% cap rate can turn into a nightmare the first time a county inspector shows up. The real sweet spot is buying at 8% to 10% and improving your way to 12% through operational upgrades. That's the patient money play. Number 3, staffing and temp agencies. Morgan Housel wrote something insane as ever that I think about constantly. He said the businesses that survive aren't the ones that predict the future correctly. They're the ones that adapt to whatever future shows up. Staffing agencies are that business. When the economy booms, companies need temporary workers to handle the overflow. When the economy contracts, companies replace expensive full-time employees with temporary staff to control costs. Either way, the staffing agency wins. Generalist temp and industrial staffing agencies sell for 3.5 to 5 times adjusted EBITDA. Specialized agencies, the ones placing IT contractors, travel nurses, or engineers, command 5.5 to 7.5 times because of higher billing rates and harder to replicate talent pipelines. A staffing agency doing $3 million in revenue with 20% gross margins and $300,000 in EBITDA might cost you $1 million to $1.5 million to acquire. But the real genius of buying a staffing agency instead of starting one is the existing client contracts. Starting a new agency means cold calling HR departments for months or years before landing your first enterprise contract. Buying an established one means those contracts transfer to you at closing. You inherit the relationships, the billing history, the vendor approvals, and the payment terms. Here's the cash flow challenge that surprises most first-time buyers, though. Temp agencies pay workers weekly, but enterprise clients pay invoices on net 60 or net 90 terms. That means for the first 2 to 3 months, you're bleeding cash. Experienced buyers set up receivables factoring lines or revolving credit facilities before closing to bridge that gap. The client concentration rule is critical too. If an agency makes $1 million in EBITDA, but 40% of that comes from a single manufacturing client, a contract cancellation post-acquisition will crater your returns. Smart buyers demand that no single client represents more than 15% of total revenue. Diversification isn't just a stock market concept. It's a business acquisition survival rule. Number 2, veterinary practices. Here's the thing about pet owners. They don't negotiate on healthcare for their animals. A dog needs surgery, the owner pays. A cat needs blood work, the owner pays. There's no insurance company sending back a claim denial. There's no government reimbursement rate squeezing your margins. It's the closest thing to a pure cash pay healthcare business that exists. Independent veterinary clinics run at 18% to 22% EBITDA margins. A small general practice doing $1 million in revenue and generating $200,000 in EBITDA currently sells for 5.5 to 9 times that EBITDA, putting the acquisition price between $1.1 million and $1.8 million. Those multiples are elevated compared to other small businesses, and the reason is competition from private equity. Firms like Mars, VCA, NVA, and Vetcor have been aggressively buying independent practices for years, creating what the industry calls a consolidation wave. And that consolidation wave is actually the opportunity for individual buyers. Here's why. PE firms are paying 6 to 8 times for small practices and then bundling them into 50 clinic platforms that they sell to larger institutional funds at 14 to 18 times EBITDA. If you can acquire even 2 or 3 practices, consolidate the back office operations, and position yourself as a small regional platform, you're playing the same multiple arbitrage game that the billion-dollar firms are playing. The critical retention issue is the associate veterinarians. A vet practice is only worth its sticker price if the doctors stay. If your lead vet walks out 6 months after closing, you've lost 40% to 50% of your revenue overnight. That's why experienced buyers negotiate long-term employment contracts with retention bonuses and non-compete agreements before the deal closes. Walker Deibel wrote in Buy Then Build that the single greatest advantage of acquisition over starting from scratch is that you're buying proof. Proof that the model works, that the customers exist, and that the revenue is real. Veterinary practices are perhaps the purest example of that principle. People have been paying to keep their pets healthy for decades. That's not a trend. That's human nature. Number 1, funeral homes. I saved this one for last because it is, without question, the most recession-proof, competition-proof, disruption-proof business on this entire list. And I know that sounds like a bold claim, but let me show you the math. The demand for funeral services is driven by one factor that no economic cycle, no technology trend, and no government policy can change. People die. The crude death rate in the United States is approximately 10.4 per 1,000 people per year. That's roughly 3.4 million deaths annually, and that number is projected to increase as the baby boomer generation ages. The customer base literally grows every single year, and there is zero seasonality, zero discretionary spending risk, and almost zero price sensitivity during the buying moment. When a family loses someone, they don't comparison shop on Yelp. Independent funeral homes sell for 4 to 6 times EBITDA for standard single director operations, with revenue multiples running 0.8 to 1.2 times gross annual revenue. A funeral home handling 200 calls a year with an average revenue per call of $7,500 is doing $1.5 million in annual revenue. At a 25% EBITDA margin, that's $375,000 in earnings, putting the acquisition price between $1.5 million and $2.25 million. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most funeral homes come with something called a pre-need trust fund. These are prepaid funeral contracts where families have already paid for services that haven't been delivered yet. That trust fund is a built-in future revenue pipeline. You're buying a business that has already sold services it hasn't performed yet. The cash is sitting in a trust waiting for you. The barriers to entry are enormous. Zoning restrictions make it nearly impossible to build a new funeral home in most municipalities. Nobody wants one next to their house. So the existing ones have a natural geographic monopoly. If there are 3 funeral homes serving a county of 100,000 people, there will probably still be 3 funeral homes serving that county 20 years from now. The industry is shifting from traditional burials at an average revenue of $7,000 to $10,000 per call toward cremations at $1,500 to $3,500. Smart buyers are adapting by offering premium cremation packages with memorial services, custom urns, and celebration of life events that bring the average cremation revenue up to $4,000 to $5,000. The service is evolving, but the demand never stops. Johnson Consulting Group, one of the leading funeral industry advisory firms, reports that large multi-location platforms command 6 to 10 times EBITDA. So the same roll-up arbitrage that works in dental and veterinary works here too. Buy a single home at 4 times, buy 2 more. Consolidate the accounting, the marketing, and the fleet. Sell the 3-location platform at 7 or 8 times. The spread between what you paid and what you sell for is where the real wealth is built. And here's the final lesson about funeral homes that applies to every business on this list. Community reputation is everything. A legacy funeral director who retires without a warm, personal handover to the new owner risks losing families to local competitors. That's why the smartest buyers don't just write a check and take the keys. They spend 6 to 12 months working alongside the retiring director, attending services together, meeting families, and earning the community's trust before the transition is complete. You're not just buying a business, you're inheriting a relationship with an entire town. And that brings me to the pattern that ties all 10 of these businesses together. None of them are new ideas. None of them are innovative. None of them will ever trend on social media or land you on the cover of a magazine. But every single one of them has paying customers on day one. Every single one has predictable recurring cash flow. And every single one of them has been operating profitably for years or decades before you write your check. Let me be honest with you for a moment. When I first started studying how wealth is actually built, not how it's portrayed on Instagram, but how it actually happens in the real world, I kept finding the same pattern over and over. The wealthiest people I studied didn't invent anything. They didn't disrupt anything. They bought something that was already working and made it work a little better. Then they did it again. Think about 2 people, Marcus and Elena. Marcus spent 3 years trying to launch a tech startup. He burned through $80,000 in savings, worked 80-hour weeks, pivoted the idea 4 times, and eventually ran out of money. Elena took that same $80,000, used it as a 10% down payment on an SBA loan, and bought a small HVAC company from a retiring owner. Within 12 months, she was taking home $180,000 a year in owner's salary, while the debt paid itself from the business's existing cash flow. Same starting capital. Completely different outcomes. The difference wasn't intelligence or luck. It was strategy. The question isn't which of these businesses is the best. The question is which one matches the capital you have available, the skills you already possess, and the lifestyle you want to live. A parking lot is almost entirely passive. A veterinary practice requires hands-on operational management. A staffing agency needs someone who understands people and sales. A funeral home needs someone who can lead with empathy during the worst day of someone's life. The right business for you is the one that fits, not the one that sounds most impressive at a dinner party. The Biz Buy Sell report says the average small business sold last year had been listed for just 168 days. That means every 168 days, an opportunity closes. Another owner retires. Another cash-flowing business finds a new home. The question is whether you'll be the one writing that check or whether you'll still be scrolling through videos about how to start something from nothing. Hit that subscribe button if you want more videos breaking down how real wealth is built behind the scenes. Tell me in the comments which of these 10 businesses surprised you the most, and which one you'd actually consider buying. I'm John, and I'll see you in the next one.